Giving it, having it to give, taking it, moving it around. Living it, giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each stitch with magic.
Hello, again, on the right microphone this time. I'm Martha Cinader, and this is Listen and Be Heard on WPVM FM 103.7 FM, the voices of Asheville. I'm joined by Tony Robles. Are you there, Tony?
Martha, how are you?
I'm
Great
good.
to be with you again, and to all the WPVM FM listeners. Hello.
You've been traveling.
I sure have. I'm 3 hours behind you. It's a little bit after 12 noon here in lovely Cameron Park, California, where the sun is out and the voices are rising coast to coast.
And you've been hearing some different voices and reporting on them. You spoke to Tamim Ansary.
Wonderful poet, wonderful memoir writer, Afghan-American writer who has, is a very, very powerful voice. I met him at the Filipino Cultural Center in San Francisco. He was one of the guest readers at the book launch of Beverly Perino's book, Wildflowers, the wonderful short story collection. Tamim was on hand to celebrate in that and to share his poetry. And very, very powerful poet. I was not, familiar with him, but I got a chance to talk to him, and he was very gracious with his time.
So we'll be hearing that conversation a little later in the show. And for people who might have missed the conversation with Beverly Perino last week, they can still go to listenandbeheard.net and see the video or listen to the show as a podcast. So you didn't really miss out on that one. But we're also going to hear from your mom.
Yes, Flo Mayberry is, a very, very wonderful woman. And not just because she's my mother, even though that has a lot to do with it. She is a writing coach, and she's also a copy editor. And, she's, in her journey towards writing, it's just a very interesting story. And for people that are interested in pursuing, writing a memoir or writing anything at all, she's very much an inspiration. And she'll be sharing part of that journey towards writing and how she got to where she is. Right. And again, I would not be co-hosting this show with you if not for my mother.
We all got to thank your mother, Flo Mayberry.
Yes.
And we're also looking forward to hearing from my good friend and great writer and performance artist, Edwin Torres, later in the show, who I thought I was going to do live, but I wound up recording from Greenville this morning, Greenville, South Carolina, that is, which is where I'm from. Not originally, but where I live now. And Edwin was speaking to me from New York. And I was thinking about how this show has progressed, actually, because we started out just doing a podcast. And that has progressed into a live radio show, which is also still presented as a podcast. And now we're stretching it to 2 hours. And I was just thinking that we've grown. This is episode 15. And my concept has kind of moved from podcasting to live radio. And I even hope to set up some kind of radio situation in Greenville, South Carolina eventually now.
Yeah, I can't believe we're on our 15th episode. I think the growth is fantastic. just the response that we've gotten, and it's a chance to really get in the community and really engage with the myriad of voices and points of view and the different artistic sensibilities and practitioners that are out there. It's a rich area, and we look to explore that and engage with that even more regionally. And we have online listeners as well throughout the country, people in California. So.
Well, I hope that the original idea, which is both to encourage and support writers and readers in the Carolinas by both promoting what's going on locally and connecting local people in other areas of the country. And hopefully that way we're like connecting to each other and serving, a large community and a smaller community at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me at the start of the show, Tony. And I love it that you're getting around and letting us know what's going on in different places. Maybe you could join us again at the end of the show. But we're going to go now, speaking of your mother, to your interview with Flo Mayberry. Thanks for joining me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha, and welcome to Listen and Be Heard Radio on WPVM 103.7 FM, the voice of Asheville, and online at WPVMFM.org. I'm Tony Robles, and it is my pleasure to welcome a very special guest. In fact, I would not be here if not for this guest. Flo Mayberry is a book doula who helps authors find their voice, be it in poetry or memoir, fiction or nonfiction. She helps authors give birth to wonderful and unique literary work. Not only that, she happens to be my mother. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Flo Mayberry, also known as Flo the Doula, to our show. Hi, Mom.
Hi, son. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, May is a very important month. Mother's Day just passed. Your birthday just passed a few days ago. Mm-hmm. And, May is a very, very special month. Let me ask you just first, the book Doula, wonderful title. How did you get the name The Book Doula?
Okay. Well, I'm a writing book coach. So one of my clients actually named me that. And you thought it was a good idea, and I thought it was a great idea. So here we are. I'm the book doula from now on.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful. I think Flo, the book doula, just has such a wonderful ring to it. Now, as a doula, you really help to birth books and ideas for books. In your capacity as a book coach, a copy editor, and a ghostwriter. Mom, I'd like to ask, what gave birth to your particular passion for the written word and working with writers?
I think it started as a kid, me correcting other people's grammar.
Oh, man.
I think that's how it started. I was actually not a very good student, but I was an excellent student in English. I love to diagram sentences. Who likes to diagram sentences?
Yeah.
I did. I like to correct other people's, vocabulary and their sentences, their grammar. I like to do that. So that went on through school. And I held on to that, but I didn't think it was possible for me to do it, to be perfectly honest. I did other things. I had a career in library science, and that was a good career, and I liked it. It was, it involved books. And so I thought, that's a passion of mine too. So that was a good start. But that wasn't really what my calling was. And to be honest, my calling came late in life, but thank God it did come. And it actually began after I retired from the library. I was preparing for a shift in career while I was working in the library. As you recall, I took a year-long class in professional sequence and editing. It was a 3-semester course, very in-depth. And so that prepared me for a career in editing. After that, I went on to get my MFA in writing and consciousness, actually. And you would think that would be enough to give me the confidence that I needed to go on and begin my editing career. But it did not, because I was not confident in my own abilities. I had all of the skills that I needed, but I didn't have the confidence. So I do want to say to anybody that's listening, if you have a passion for something, whatever it happens to be, don't wait as long as I did. Just go ahead and do it. If you'll acquire the skills as you go along. If you've had the training and you don't think you're confident, just do it. Don't wait. And so I had to wait about 7 years before I actually got to do my passion, which actually I believe was, a book doula, birthing stories and working with authors. But during that time, it wasn't really a loss, because I began working with a tutoring company. So I honed up on my grammar and restructure and all of those basic things. And then I went out on my own and advertised as a tutor for college students working on their personal personal college stories that they were to submit for acceptance at mostly the graduate level. So I did that for a few years, and that gave me more confidence working with people on Zoom.
Yeah, because I know this is a whole different thing, since the pandemic, doing things on Zoom. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned, early on that you had a proclivity to kind of, have a sense for, grammar and correcting somebody. That I guess, you could get into trouble as a kid if the person you're correcting happens to be older.
Right. And usually that was the case.
Oh, really? What was it?
And the other thing was, I would look at word signs, on the street, and like for rent signs. And I remember I would see to let instead of for rent. And I think to let may be a British term or something like that. But I could never figure out why someone wouldn't just say for rent, because it wasn't that much longer than saying to let. But
to let?
Back in the day, I don't know if they still do that.
Let?
To let.
You mean T-O space L-E-T?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And so I thought I was constantly confused about that. Why wouldn't they just say for rent, which was clear, and it was only like maybe 2 or 3 letters longer? So, early on, I was very much involved with words, But getting back to what getting to my ultimate calling, which, as you call it, the book doula, that came actually in around 2019, say, close to 2020. And you made that connection. Thank you very much, son. You made the connection with a local publisher here in Hendersonville.
Yes.
And actually, I was still rather lacking in confidence. And when I was speaking to the lady, I was trying to talk her out of it, but out of hiring me as an independent contractor. But she wasn't having that. And I guess she could see through to the real me. And so she hired me as an independent contractor. I started doing copy editing with her and a little proofreading. Next thing, up was working as a coach, book coach, and then as a ghostwriter. So between 2020 and now, I've done all of those things. And once I started that, I realized I had identified my calling.
And the publishing company or the house that you worked for was the Cheerful Word in Hendersonville, and that was Sam, the founder Sam Ewell, Sam Ewell that you spoke to.
When we left in the morning, getting on the subway, when we went to our workplace, we made it holy. You got to make every place you go holy. Make your bodies holy. Make your workplace holy. Make your homes holy. Make your children holy. Make your churches really holy. Make your mosque really holy. Make your synagogues really holy. Make you holy. Make this place holy. A sermon's been going on here. Church time in here. You said amen. Say a woman. Say also, I will be human. I will be human. I will be human. I will be human, human, human. Human. Human, human, human. Human. Human, 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 human. I can be human. I know I can be human. I can be saying. Human, human. I know. I can be human. Give me time. Give me a little more time. I can be human. 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 In a book called Does Your House Have Lions?
That was Sonia Sanchez, and apologies for my still fumbling around here a little, learning this radio board. I might have cut off the beginning of that a little bit, but that's it's called Live at 360, and it's from a CD called Jazz Poetry Cafe, the Black Words compilation album, Volume 1. And before that, we were listening to Tony's conversation with his mother, Flo Mayberry, who's a writing coach, or as she was saying, a book doula. And we're going to go back to that conversation right now.
me to the next question. You know, you have capacity. You do all these different things. You're wearing all these different hats: book coach, copy editor, ghostwriter. How are those things? You know, how are those hats similar, but how are they different?
Okay, the copy editor and the proofreader don't involve another person. It's a solitary endeavor. You know, you work with the manuscript. You make comments on the manuscript. You're looking for mostly, as a copy editor, you're looking for grammar issues. You're looking for a flow, how the document flows from paragraph to paragraph. You're also looking, and you're looking at structure as well. You know, does one paragraph follow the next one, and then does that follow the next one congruently? You know, does it make sense? All of those kinds of things. That's what a copy editor does. Proofreader is pretty similar to that, but the proofreader is the final, instead of the copy editor. The copy editor edits, and then it goes on to the book designer, and it goes on other places. And then before the book is actually printed, the final person it goes to is the proofreader. And the proofreader is supposed to catch all of those things that didn't get caught at an earlier stage, because they're the last people to have their hands on the manuscript before it goes to the printer. So that's an important stage in the book. The book coach is a person who works with the author from the inception of the book or before. Sometimes they come with a draft, other times they don't. You have to give them suggestions, and you kind of take their, well, when you first work with a client, with a new author, you ask them certain questions. I usually give them a few questions to answer. You know, for example, who is your target audience? Who is the reader that would most benefit and would probably buy the book? What is your purpose for writing? Why are you writing this book, and what are you trying to say? What do you hope to accomplish at the end? You know, so all of those questions you start off with before you even begin the writing process. Hopefully, sometimes they come with a draft, but whether they come with a draft or not, you still have to ask those questions.
Let me ask you this, Mom. You know, you mentioned a lot in our conversation about confidence. Let's say, you know, you're working with somebody that, you're trying to, book coach, because there's a lot of folks out there that are thinking or would like to write, but don't really think they have anything to say necessarily, or they don't really have the confidence. Let's say, somebody comes in and you're working with them, but they really don't have their confidence could be better. How do you go about nurturing and developing that?
Okay, that has happened quite frequently because most of my clients are first-time authors, and what they need is encouragement. And I usually begin by telling them we're in this together. We're a team. Right. Yeah. And I tell them we're a team, and I'm going to be there. I'm not going to drop you halfway through. I'm going to be with you for the duration. And that alone tends to give them some comfort and tends to make them relax. And I follow that up by being consistent. For example, in the beginning, I'm always very consistent about my communication with them. If I say I'm going to send them an email at a certain time, I follow up at that specific time. I don't try to change up and, that kind of thing. And that gives them a certain level of confidence. And then once I gain their confidence, then we can relax a little bit, and by that time, they're usually pretty comfortable with me. Every time I meet with them on Zoom or if it's in person, I have met in person with authors. Either way, we start off very professionally. And by the end of the series or of Zoom meetings, and by the time we finish a first draft, we've bonded. It's always happened, and most of the people that I've worked with, by the end, we're friends, and it goes to a different level after that. I meet with them for lunch or, whatever. They become friends because they're telling their story. They're telling it in a heartfelt way, and you're listening to all of this, and, it just automatically creates a bond. There's no way to avoid it, really.
I guess, when you're dealing with, writers, you have different genres, I guess, working with somebody writing, let's say, nonfiction as opposed to poetry is I guess you tailor make your approach to just whatever the need is.
I do. But like I said, most of my authors are first-time authors, and they're not really familiar with the process. So I try to explain the process as I see it all the way through. I tend to say, well, okay, we will be writing a first draft, and once we finish the first draft, it'll then go to the publisher, get submitted for approval, and then it'll go to the designer, and then it'll, go from there through the entire process. So that makes them comfortable as well. But once they know, I try to build trust with the authors, and I try to let them know I'm with them. I'm their cheerleader. I'm wanting this to succeed, and when it actually does succeed, I'm celebrating. So I let them know that early on and encourage them all the way through, even when they're not sure. And also, I found that a little teaching, my teaching experience has come into play as a book coach, because I have noticed that when I comment on a manuscript, say the author has sent me something to look at, frequently I will make comments, and I will also demonstrate how I would do it, because I found that by demonstrating, they can look at what I've done, and then they can kind of emulate that, not only in that particular paragraph, but in their writing overall. So I do a little teaching as well.
Yeah, you had mentioned, having gotten your MFA, Masters of Fine Arts, in Writing and Consciousness from New College of California, and what's really intriguing is that you are around the same age that I was when I got my master's from Vermont College. I think 58. Yeah. But I wanted to.
It was the same age.
The same track. I just wanted to know, and I got a chance to see some of this. But for those listeners who are in that age group that are thinking of going back to school and pursuing a degree in writing, how hard was it, and what would you tell somebody looking to get a writing degree when they're a little bit older?
Okay. You're right. I was in my 50s when I went back to school to get my Master of Fine Arts degree in creative writing. And I was with students. I was in a cohort with students at least half my age. They were all basically right out of college, and they were entering grad school. So they were basically in their 20s, and I was in my 50s. But what I noticed, and I was, to be perfectly honest, I was terrified when I saw that. When I saw how young these students were, I just thought, I can't compete with this. But what I realized, and this is what carried me through, those students that were in their 20s, they were still partying pretty hard. And they were, they hadn't sowed their wild oats. And I was already settled. And so while they were out partying, I was doing my homework. And that was a huge difference, because some of them were actually coming to me to get some advice because they had been up late the night before. And, so what I'm saying to anyone who wants to get an advanced degree later in life, use what you have, what your strengths are. And your strengths are your maturity. Your discipline that comes with age.
Yes.
And I think once you realize you have that, you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And that is going to carry you a long way.
In the bebop band at Minton's, there was a very beautiful trumpet player who could walk the cliffs at dawn like a dogon, put directly on mouth of the slow blues, groove high and oobop shabam, a kookamop in the hot house of Minton's. A very beautiful trumpet player with so much confrontational stress, so much cheek inflation, so much exhilarating concentration, so much chromaticizing in the pistons of the oobla-dee at Minton's. A very beautiful trumpet player with such a torrential outburst of spitballs and such forceful streams of aerophonic breath, such mysterious piercing winds, such an array of terrifying cuts on drum cans of Montega in the rough house at Minton's at Monroe's. A very beautiful trumpet player. Sharp pitches of the path from Goree to South Carolina and back with salt peanuts and Akana Cubano bop and Ashe of Tintindale, Papa Odabo, salt peanuts in the hot house of Minton's at Monroe's. A very beautiful trumpet player who could intensify and energize and dynamize the changes in cool breeze of the caravan, who could pop up and have more punch and overall tone of the reference, who could transpose clowning into another composition of contrasting sounds, who could elaborate and agitate and illuminate the voltage in Tunisia and oobop shabam down round midnight, grooving high and bopping the blues in the bebop band at Minton's at Monroe's. A very beautiful trumpet player named Dizzy Gillespie.
That was Jane Cortez. a cut called Blues Bop for Diz. And it's from a CD called Jane Cortez and the Fire Spitters, Taking the Blues Back Home. That's from 1996. There's a lot of stuff worth listening to, you know, even if it's not absolutely new. And you're listening now to Listen and Be Heard. My name is Martha Cinader, and this is WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. Before that, we were listening to a conversation with between Tony Robles and his mother, Flo Mayberry, who is a book coach. And we are going to go back to that conversation to finish it up right now.
Was doing my master's degree at Vermont. We had some folks that were older. I mean, there was one guy who was 75 that had been a lawyer, owns his own business, kind of travels the world, but always wanted to be a writer, and finally decided, hey, you know, I want to finally, pursue what my dream is. Well, we're kind of winding down with time. I wanted to ask you this. Now, we know that you are, a book doula, Flo, the book doula, but you are also a self-described Hoofer's daughter. And, you're coming from a family, parents, one parent is African-American, the other one is Irish, both, I guess you can say biracial. You started to write recently your own memoir.
Yes.
And if you could talk a little bit about what was the impetus that got you, to put pen to paper to start on your memoir. And if you could tell us what the working title is.
Okay, the working title is The Hoofer's Daughter. And Hoofer, of course, means tap dancer. My father, your grandfather, was a tap dancer in vaudeville, and so that's where that title comes from. Also known as a Hoofer. Tap dancers are known as Hoofers. Actually, I had been thinking about it for a while because I had done a memoir as my thesis, but this one is a little different. I think it's going to go faster than I expect. It's different. It's going to be a story that begins in my childhood, and it involves some separation. As you know, I lived with my grandmother in my early years because of the racism in housing in San Francisco, in liberal San Francisco in the early 1950s. And so that the reader will follow my journey during the first 7 years of my life, and then having to transfer to my parents' house once they were able to find suitable housing, to rent back then, that was suitable to raise a child, basically, because the only thing they could find early on when I was a baby was in a rooming house. And, it wasn't possible to raise an infant in a rooming house that didn't even have a bathroom. And that's how it was. So at 7 years old, they found this flat to rent on Kearney, San Francisco in North Beach district. And but 7 years is a long time, to be nurtured by your grandmother and then shifting to parents. And so I'm going to, share that journey. And then later on, how separation of family, because, it was my parents were biracial, you're right. And that involved separation for a long time with my mother's side of the family, and also dad's side of the family, because he had some older children, and which I did not know very well. And so it takes the reader on the journey I had to take to become whole and to reach out to the those family members that I had been estranged from as a child. And I was able to do that because families change. They evolve over time. So whatever issues they had were no longer relevant, because by that time, families don't stay stagnant. They change. And so I was able to embrace both sides of my family. And when I did that, I became whole. And so that's what the story, it ends on a very positive note. And that's what I want. I want it to be inspiring. I want it to inspire mixed race people, or just people who have been separated from their families for whatever reason, to feel like they can take that journey and at least reach out and possibly have similar results that I had. Once I was connected to both my families, I felt whole. And it remains such to this day. I am so happy. I don't have to worry about that. I'm whole.
Well, I know that in memoir, a lot of people's stories and memoirs are healing and inspiring. And, through that, it offers a lot of comfort. Mom, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. I wouldn't be here if not for you. You helped me tremendously in the books that I have gotten published, the poetry books. In fact, there's another book that is going to come out later on this year out of Red Hawk Press, a book of poetry about working in a thrift store that you really helped with structuring and whatnot, and I very, very much appreciate it. Now, for our listeners, WPVM, PVM, FM, and online, WPVM.org. If there's somebody out there that is looking for a copy editor or proofreader, or wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that, Mom?
Okay. Right now, my little business that I have is called Right On Tutoring and Editing. And my email address is fmayberry47@gmail.com.
So Right On Tutoring and Editing. Oh, go ahead, Mom. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Or they can call me at 828-768-1894.
Okay, so that's Right On Tutoring and Editing. F. Mayberry.
WRITE.
Yeah, and then the email is fmayberry
47
fmayberry47@gmail.com, and your phone number is area code 828-768-1894. Mom, love you very much. Thank you so much for being on the program.
That was Carol Emanuel on the harp. It's from a CD called Tops of Trees, which was a gift to me. The CD was from a much sorely missed friend, Butch Morris, who was the composer of that cut number 2 called Christ Mass. And that also included Bobby Previtt, Marty Ehrlich, Mark Ribot, Hank Roberts, and Guy Kluchevsek. I hope I said that somewhat correctly. And the name of the CD, once again, is Tops of Trees with Carol Emanuel on harp. It's a pretty interesting CD. She has some other very interesting composers on here, like Bill Frisell and John Zorn, Marty Ehrlich. So I don't know how readily available it is, but you heard it here on WPVM FM in Asheville, 103.7. My name is Martha Cinader, and you're listening to Listen and Be Heard with our new 2-hour format. We go from 3 to 5 on Wednesday afternoons here on a beautiful day in Asheville, North Carolina. We've been doing this show for everybody, but we're kind of focusing on readers and writers, which I think includes most everybody. And certainly if you want to be included, we welcome you into that group. And I hope that people have been listening and that I'm being heard, that Tony is being heard, that all our guests on this show are being heard and thought about, considered. I sure would like to hear from you and know that, though. So there's a few ways that you could get in touch. You can always email me at editor, EDITOR, at listenandbeheard.net. You can go to listenandbeheard.net and actually submit. We have a website there where we also publish articles and the unedited video interviews that we sometimes cut down to feature on this show, which is also a podcast. So if you ever want to hear something again, there's something that you didn't quite remember that you heard, you can always go to look for the links that are mentioned in this show at listenandbeheard.net. You can watch the videos. And you can also check out this show in the future at places like Spotify and Apple Podcast and so on. Subscribe to us like that so you can pick us up even if you're not in the Asheville area. And also WPVM has its own app. So if you are in Asheville and you want to stay in touch with the programming that way or anywhere in the world, you could download the WPVM app by visiting WPVMFM.org. Next up, we're going to hear an interview that Tony did with Afghan-American writer Tamim Ansary. Am I saying his name right? I hope so. Yes, Tamim Ansary. And later on, we'll be hearing from an interview that I did with Edwin Torres. So please stay tuned.
Hi, this is WPVM FM 103.7. This is Tony Robles, and I'm speaking to Tamim Ansary. Tamim is an Afghan-American author who takes a particular interest in zones where cultures and civilizations overlap. His books include West of Kabul, East of New York, a memoir about the bicultural life, and Destiny Disrupted, a history of the world through Islamic eyes. Tamim, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Let me just ask you something. I know that you have a poem that you're going to share with us, a very powerful poem. But, it looks like, with your writing, and I'm not really that familiar with your writing, but I heard you read at this reading a few minutes ago I know that you have a memoir. Are you primarily a memoirist, or are you primarily a poet, or are you kind of like cross genre?
Well, I'm not primarily a poet. I translated the poems of my ancestor. Mm-hmm. I'm primarily a memoirist and a historian, is what I've published. I also write fiction. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how, because, on our radio program, we interview authors and their process, how, how, let's say, fiction and history kind of connect or, intersect, because, fiction writers are, writing truth, even though it might not be truth. We're addressing a human truth, and how that relates to, history, because we know that oftentimes the history is written by, not necessarily the victor. How do you negotiate that in terms of your own process?
Well, I think I would, I would point to the relationship more between memoir and history. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I think memoir and history are actually the same genre, for me at least. Yes. They're just the same genre, the same subject seen at different scales. So memoir is what history looks like up close. Mm-hmm. And history is what you see when you pull back enough to see how the lives intertwine. And then I think I would say of fiction, for me at least, mm-hmm. that while memoir is looking for the story that actually happened, you write memoir in the conviction that there is a story that actually happened. So if you're making up stuff to make it a better story, you're not really writing memoir. You start from that conviction. But on the other hand, when you pull away from a particular life, as I have done in some of my fictions, where I'm not talking about me. I've created fictional characters, but it's my preoccupations. It's my issues. And I'm trying to get to a larger truth about them by showing them as they play out in lives that are not my own, but could have been my own. Mm-hmm.
How do you, approach a memoir? I mean, there are many people that are interested in writing a memoir, but perhaps do not think that their lives are exciting enough, or they're, not poignant enough. Can you talk about that? Because people seem to think that there has to be a largeness to a life. There has to be some kind of catastrophic thing. Perhaps maybe the question is, can you write a memoir, basing your story or your memoir on a more commonplace things? I think people might be a little intimidated to even get started. And, what advice would you give people?
Well, there is a kind of memoir that's about catastrophic events or whatever. Those are offshoots of the news, I would say. This is like a thing has happened that you heard about in the news, and here's someone who's actually there. So, they were kidnapped by pirates in the Indian Ocean or whatever. But for me, I write memoir because I see a story-like aspect to life itself. Mm-hmm. And I want to capture that story. I want to tell that story in such a way that other people who read it will see the same thing I'm seeing, not about me, about the world we all share. Mm-hmm. So it's issues like you fall in love, you fall out of love. Yeah. You get old. Mm-hmm. People you love die. These are not catastrophic events in a sense, because they're happening all the time to everybody. Yeah. But man, if they're happening to you, you fell in love, you fell out of love, your parents died, whatever. They are big events, and that's what the texture of life is all about. Are those kinds of events?
Could you talk about maybe the focus of, and like I said, I haven't read your work. I've only just heard it in your reading here at the Filipino Center in San Francisco. But I'm interested in just getting some information on west of Kabul, east of New York, a memoir about the bicultural life, and how you approached it, and what the focus of that was.
Well, I have a memoirish kind of like news hook aspect to my life, mm-hmm. which is that my father was among the very first students sent from Afghanistan abroad to get a Western education. So he was probably one of the first 24 or so. And When he came to Chicago to study, he met my mother, who married him and became the first American woman to go back to Afghanistan and live as part of an Afghan family.
Wow. Yeah.
So then I grew up in those two worlds, and I've straddled those two cultures in my life. And right after 9/11, although I've obviously been interested in that bicultural thing my whole life, right after 9/11, when people discovered, Afghanistan is actually a real place, then all of a sudden my memoir had a chance of being published, but I was interested in it anyhow, apart from that.
Did you have to deal with, in terms of being bicultural, straddling or being between two worlds, did you have to, kind of confront any misconceptions with the public or the literary world, or just in general, the people that may have, had a view of, people from Afghanistan that may have been, perpetrated by the media or whatever. Did you confront any of that at all?
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. In the wake of 9/11.
Yeah.
Everybody who's from Afghanistan confronted it in some way, and I confronted it less than other Afghans because you can probably tell I have no accent. Mm-hmm. I think somebody who meets me on the streets and falls into conversation with me might say things about Afghans not knowing I am one.
Yeah.
So I've had that.
Yeah.
And equally, I think I've had the experience of being in Afghanistan and feeling like Afghans don't understand Americans. It's like, 'cause I think I do understand Americans and Americanism too. So,
in reading your short bio, it looks like you had another book. I don't know if this was a memoir. It was called Destiny Disrupted, A History of the World Through Islamic Eyes. I know that there's been books about, there was one guy, I forget the guy's name, but he wrote a book. He's a Muslim, but he wrote a book about Jesus, and I forget.
Oh yeah, Reza Aslan.
Reza Aslan, yeah. I think there was another book called The 100 Most Influential People in History, and I think Muhammad was number one.
Yeah, he was
in that.
High on the list. I know that. I don't know that particular.
I think he was actually number one. Yeah, he was number one. I think Jesus was number 3 on that list, but Muhammad, I think, was number 1. Could you talk a little bit about, just about that book and how you approached it and what the book's about?
Well, amusingly enough, I wrote a memoir and it was published, and it had some, it made some noise. When I proposed writing Destiny Disrupted, The History of the World, it's a history of the world. And that original publisher said, "Can you do it as a memoir?" I said, "Well, actually, I wasn't there for most of it." Mm-hmm.
So it was a memoir. It was a memoir?
It was not a memoir. It's a history of the world.
History of the world. Okay.
But actually, it's like my way of writing is conversational. So I just sit across the table with you, we're drinking tea, and I tell you what I know about something.
Yeah.
And History of Islam is more a case of me wanting to tell a story that speaks to some of the misconceptions people have about Islam. I think the misconceptions about Afghanistan are less than they are about Islam. Mm-hmm. And the inspiration for the book was the realization that if you are born someplace in the Islamic heartland, between, let's say, Istanbul and the Indus River, and you look out at the history of the world, you don't see the structure of history that you see if you're growing up in America and you say, okay, first the Egyptians and then, Greece, Rome, the Dark Ages, blah, blah, blah. That's a story. But there's another whole story if you're in another place. And then, so I illustrated that hypothesis by just telling the story. Mm-hmm. And it has some of the same things that you would read in a Eurocentric history, but it's an Islamocentric history. So different things are more important and different things are less important.
One of the things that is really fascinating, and I kind of got a chance to learn a little bit from your opening remarks during the reading was your work in translation. You had read some poems that I guess were translated, that you translated, and I think they were from your ancestors or people from your family line. How hard was that? Because I know that's a whole other process. Trying to get at the heart and integrity of one language and trying to translate it to another one and not lose the impact.
Well, translation is a very interesting process, and it's not a process of moving the meanings of the words from that language into this language. It has to do with getting inside how poetry works in that language and then trying to have it happen again in another language.
Yeah.
And this is particularly, I don't know if it's particularly difficult, I don't know other languages, but I think that in the case of poetry that's written originally in Farsi, there is a sense in which the sense and the sound are so intertwined that you can't exactly have it happen again in a new language unless you try to do some of that sound quality thing that's happening in the original language. And so when I've seen translations of, let's say, in my opinion, perhaps the most brilliant poet in history, which is Hafiz, there's not a translation of that that's even worth looking at.
Really?
Yeah. You have to learn the language and hear it in the original.
Well, it would be a real honor if you could share maybe one or two of the poems that you have with you that we could share with our listeners at WPBM. Again, like I said, Listen and Be Heard is a radio program that we do every Wednesday from 4 to 5. Our focus is on culture and on literature. And, we interview, many authors from, many genres. And, if you could share, because I know that you had, I think you had read it in, what language did you read it in?
Farsi.
Farsi. And then you did the English version.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really beautiful. And I would be honored if you could share those with us.
Okay. Well, should I go ahead and read a couple of couplets first in Farsi?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. All right, so here's Oynai Sifat. من نمنم من شده از منی جدا تازه تنم نه تنم تن شده از تنی جدا جام شبانه میزنم چنگ چغانه میزنم طبل یگانه میزنم با دف تن تنا. So those are the first two lines of a poem, and how I've translated it is thus. I am not me is I, from I and me I have departed. My body is not myself, from all that's physical I have departed. Every night I quaff the cup, every day I make the cello bellow. I pound the matchless drum, alone I play. So I won't read the rest of that one. If you wanted me to read another one.
That's really beautiful. And you had the one where there was a line about the feather and the hurricane.
Can I read that?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Intoxicated dancer. The poet is
it's an intoxicated dancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
The poet is Saduddin Ansari, and I'll just mention that his pen name was Turmoil of Love.
Turmoil of Love. Okay, I got you.
Shuresh. And in this genre of poetry, the tradition is to put your own pen name into the last couplet. So you'll be listening for that. Okay. Jump in, let go. The circle's brimming. Laughter beckons. Crash the solemn banquet of bewildered mystics. Dance. Trust your feet to walk across all the worlds of compulsion, like a dust mote in the wind to the kingdom of conviction. Dance. Let no speck of separation slow your steps. The heart is where you're headed, graceful dancer. Dance. What heaven lacks, you have already in that country of the heart. Be commander of of the heartland, royal highness to the lords of dance. Your heart's a salamander, you cannot lasso the ocean. In love's cleansing climate then, flowing bodiless, just dance. Shut your eyes to is and isn't, benefit and harm. Strap your thread of reason to amazement, like a madman dance. You've alighted on a leaf amidst the greenery that's all a tremble. Warmed by happiness, evaporate like dew into the garden dance. Destiny ordains that justice will prevail at last. Don't fret. You're a feather. The hurricane has come to help you dance. You ask for the remarkable impossible. Your petition has been heard. Blurred, bewildered, dressed though you be in funeral shrouds, dance. The turmoil of love has got to me. I recognize no reins now but passion. Brushed and blanketed by heaven's mercy, all I know to do is dance.
You know, that is just a wonderful, wonderful poem. It's like a dance of words, you know. And I think of the flame. I think of the flame of hope. I think of the emotion. You know, I think of the past that is never really the past.
Yeah.
That of just letting go. You know, it's just I'm just kind of I'm just kind of speechless. So, you know, in closing, Tamim, if people want to find your work, let me ask you this. You ran the San Francisco Writer Workshop for more than 2 decades. You know, what kind of what did you see in terms of the direction of writing? Did you see that more people were gravitating towards memoir, or were there certain genres that people were flocking to, or just as a teacher,
Well, first of all, I guess people in the workshop maybe considered me a teacher. I don't consider myself one. I wanted to. I said, how I guided the workshop was anything you want to bring, you can bring. Just bring no more than 6 pages. That's all I said.
6 pages. So that would be maybe 2,000 words,
whatever,
something like that. Yeah.
Like that. So that's what I did. I think that now actually memoir is something that has emerged as a genre, and I want to actually write a book pumping that, talking about that, because I think the thing that people misunderstand about memoir is they think it's a story about me. And actually, I think there could be some that are like that, but I think the bigger genre is the story that you tell about the world you've been through the windshield of your eyes. And in that sense, any kind of thing can be a memoir. And what's important about it, I will counsel memoir people that the people out there actually aren't that interested in you. They're interested in themselves.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you and these people occupy the same world. So what's interesting to everybody is you telling about the world from where you are, so that they can see how it looks compared to the world they see from where they are.
Yeah.
And in that sense, any way you get at expressing what is the world as far as you know from where you are, based on the experiences you've had and what you're thinking. And then that could be interesting to anybody, no matter what you're writing about.
Well, that's going to be very, very encouraging to our listeners that might be pondering or contemplating writing a memoir. Tamim Ansary, thank you so much for spending time with us here at WPVM. Do you have a website for people that want to?
I do, actually. I have mirtamimansary.com. I think anybody who Googles Mir Tamim Ansary will get to it.
So Tamim, that's Tamim. Ansary is ANSARY. And again, a wonderful author, and just very, 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 very moving. And again, thank you so much for being with us.
And actually, I have another website that people could visit called memoirpool.com.
Memoirpool.com.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us here at WPVM 107.3 FM, the voice of Asheville. We're going to send it back now to Martha in the studio. Thank you.
Like the sound of the rain boiling up in the sky, beat it down to the ground, bring it in with the wind, plant your tone through the zone, move on back, smear your sacks with the string where you dream, send those notes over here, speak on out. Speak on out. Say it now. Fill your horn with the depths of the clouds, turning green, possess the road. Exile the code, pepper the night, burst on through, blow on out, talk to me, talk to me.
That was another one from Jane Cortez and the Fire Spitters. That one's called Talk to Me for Don Cherry. And now we're going to go to an unreleased recording by Edwin Torres.
Viva la Viva. I used to be the picture of a family man. I used to have insurance and the family plan. I used to be a fixture for the family man. I used to have endurance for the family plan. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to have a garden with a place in the sun. I used to have a shoulder I could lay my head on. I used to be the model of a bodily soul. I used to hide a bottle in the watering hole. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to be the leader of a nation of woe. I used to push a button and the missile would go. I used to blow the whistle on the fizzle below. I used to put the sugar in the cappuccino. My people suffer more than yours do. 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 Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to have a limo, but they took it away. I used to have a pillow, but they took it away. I used to have a baby, but they took it away. I used to have a maybe, but they took it away. I used to watch the enemy before it was me. I used to watch the battle be the battle I see. I used to watch theology be all you can be. I used to watch reality before a TV. When people suffer, they go da-da-da-dum. 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 I used to beat around the bush and call it a day. I used to peter out about a third of the way. I used to pay attention to the mention of new. I used to have what used to be addiction to you. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to be the color of the people I know. I used to be the lover of the people I know. I used to be the brother of the people I know. I used to be the other of the people I know. I bet a better booty's gonna better the flow. I beat a better booty with a bubble of blow. I better let a booty be the Buddha below. A Buddha better beat it if he doesn't belong. I used to suffer but I don't. 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 You ever get a feeling life is passing you by? You ever get a feeling you could never describe? You ever get a feeling you were never alive? You ever get a feeling I could take you alive? I used to be much thinner when a thinner was fun. I used to be the winner when a winner was fun. I used to be the sinner when a sinner was fun. I used to have fun, now I'm holding a gun. Some people suffering, up, pow. 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 la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la.
Edwin Torres is a poet and performer born in New York City, author of several poetry collections, including this one. Ameriscopia is the most recent one, which of course is on my shelf. And, I can't read from the page because I've known you since the 90s, and I watched you at the New York Poets Cafe. You invited me to collaborate with you at one time in Poets Neurotica. You're an amazing performer.
Thank you.
And you're also a published writer. And you're also bilingual, and you make up a lot of words,
right?
Which I love. And you're giving a workshop, a virtual workshop on Saturday, June 3rd from 12 to 3.
Right.
And how would you describe yourself, Edwin?
Well, let's see. Thank you for having me, Martha. We've known each other for such a long time. It's a really, it's a blessing to have that lineage and to have that connection. As you know, it's always important. It's important to kind of know not just where you're from, but where you've been, and that all the connections kind of lead you to where you are now. I mean, that's a very generic statement, but it's just like the sense of not just friendship, but also just that real rootedness into one's, upbringing and what's really established my voice as an artist. I mean, I remember the times that we performed at Thread Waxing Space.
Yes.
A space that you coordinated on Broadway downtown before
Sunday afternoon stories.
Yeah, before the rents were insane. And it was a beautiful, such a great gathering. And,
It really was. And your now wife, Liz, used to do the door there for me.
Yes.
And she was like so dependable for that. It's so great. Just,
Elizabeth,
just being there.
But I want to just correct. I actually have, let me see, there's this book, which came after Ameriscopia.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then the most current one is actually this one. Oh, my blurry background. Conundrum, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
I apologize. I think that's on my shelf somewhere too.
I thought so. I thought you had it. Yeah,
I did. And so I'm just getting old. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But Conundrum actually won the American Book Award last year, so I'm very proud of it.
I didn't even know that. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Edwin.
I came out from Roof Books. And it's great to kind of have that jump. I mean, you remember Steve Cannon way back. And Steve Cannon was such a mentor to so many poets. And when I was getting into spoken word, Steve would have these fabulous stoop workshops in his home where he would sort of like teach the young folk who are doing stuff on stage that it belongs on the page first. So I really try to make sure that the poem is working as text.
Interesting, because I wanted to talk to you. I was playing before bringing you on Viva La Viva.
Oh, yes.
And then I noticed that you have that in Ameriscopia.
Right.
So go ahead and talk about that a little, how you get from the page to the stage.
Well, that poem, Viva La Viva, is actually began the first line of a friend of mine was going through a divorce. So it's like, okay, and I said, okay, well, I want to write. It was very affecting to me because his whole life was changing. So he used to be the picture of a family man was the first line for me. So Viva La Viva came from a series of rhyming couplets that were trying to explore one's sense of self through change, through transformation, basically. I know poetry is a great vehicle to kind of instigate change through what language can do. So poem, I knew rhyme and repetition would be sort of like a mantra of sorts to kind of explore what transformation can do. So Viva La Viva, the phrase Viva La Viva is kind of like an intermingled sense of like, Che Guevara and just seeing some graffiti in a Paris wall and just kind of like say, okay, that would work as a refrain in the middle of all these couplets. So that poem took a long time to construct, actually, because it's so simple, but the simplicity needs a lot of work.
Yes, to make sure that what's there is expressing.
That it's expressing it, and also that the simple form of the rhyme covers quite a lot of territory. So the poem itself, transforms into this kind of like a dark ending, but it's also just like life goes on in a way. Do you want to play that, or?
I was playing it before you came on, so our listeners have heard Viva La Diva.
Oh, great. Well, and the recording itself, Matt Harrell, the musician that worked with me on that, just came up with this really beautiful. It's sort of like DIY electronics. It's not like really fancy. It's kind of old MIDI synthesizer stuff that just worked with the poem in some kind of way. And he knew where to pull out, where to let empty spaces allow the words to kind of like have fuller meaning, and when to kind of come in and be a little more chaotic. So working with Matt has been really beautiful. Our band is called Sound House, but it's basically just me and him. But that project was a few years.
And do you go out and perform with him?
We did. We haven't been Sound House for a while, which is fine. Everything has its own transformation.
Right.
But I try to keep active recording wise to kind of like have the poem have another life in the recording studio. So I'm working with other musicians, including the one that you played last week, Un Kadi Renversé dans l'herbe, which is a mouthful.
Thank you for saying that.
which translates into shopping carts thrown into the grass. So
that's some name.
It's crazy. So he came up with that. But anyway, I've known him, Didac, for many years. He's from Barcelona, and he also creates kind of digitally based electronic music. So I like kind of like putting language into this other form besides the text, besides stage and so forth. So the poem has many lives beyond the written form.
Now, what do you intend to bring to this virtual workshop? Is this going to be sort of a combination of these things? Or?
The workshop is geared more around the body's place in the poem. I see the edge of the poem almost as a poet's spine. Like, that's a metaphorical sense of a visual representation, but like, how does the poet allow themselves to exist in their poem? And
okay, now I want to stop you for a moment, because I'm having all these memories of seeing you perform, and how much of it is body, like no spoken word at all, but just watching you. And I remember seeing you like with multiple tape recorders that you were turning on and off. You do moves like a dancer, I would say. You're very sort of conscious of how you're using your body, almost like, I don't want to say it's comedic, but I think of like physical comedians with some of the things that you've done. So you really kind of, you don't hesitate to draw on different mediums and forms of expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
Tell me how that all relates to your poetry and spoken word.
That's really a great question. To me, it's spatial dynamics, like working on the stage, and how our proximity is to the audience and what they're picking up on, not just the words, but what they're seeing. I'm interested in how the poem can translate its meaning in many ways. What I was saying before about the poem sort of levitating off the page. I would work on the stage and be conscious of the fact that I'm physically stopping reading, and I bend down, I pick up the tape recorder, I move it over here. So now I'm a worker. Now I'm a stagehand. And now I'm the poet. So I like that blurring of distinction. I think that creates a certain loss of hierarchy in a good way. Mm-hmm. So there's no longer like, oh, we're at a church gathering and we just must pay attention. It's more just that we are all involved in the creating of the moment together. So it's a very communal sort of sense. the movements just kind of came naturally. I was doing them for a while, and I realized, well, not every poem should need to have a lot of movement to it, but I should allow myself that freedom to express myself in a way, you know.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I can tell people that it's very entertaining to watch Edwin. It's not just, well, I don't want to say just another poet, because I love to see poets just stand and read their poetry. But
absolutely.
This is a different type of expression. And I want to get a little deeper into that, because another thing that I think about with you specifically is language. You're bilingual, and I think I've always heard you speak in Spanish and English, some kind of Spanglish, but you've gone way beyond what people would call Spanglish. You have like, I don't know what you do when you proofread your books, because it must be a challenge, because probably like all the software just says everything misspelled, because I've run into that a little myself.
Right.
But I can imagine with you that it's explosive. So maybe you could talk a little bit about just your concept of language and what gives you that freedom to make up words.
I think just that, and that's what I sort of teach in workshops, not just this workshop coming up, but in general. I've taught it in Europa and other places, and it's important for me to tell the students that the world is basically their poem, and that they can use it all in different ways. So what part of that is this like lack of hierarchy, like I mentioned. So I allow myself that sense of like when an English word doesn't have the meaning that I want, I'm allowing myself to kind of invent something. But you can't just do that sort of like haphazardly. Otherwise, it becomes a joke. It becomes like, oh, he's just making up words. There's a place to kind of have them work for me rhythmically, to have them sort of like allow the current or the movement of the poem, its sort of origin or its location. That's very out there. But the idea is that, I guess, growing up also in a hybrid culture with Spanish and English, anybody that's grown up in a hybrid culture sort of develops an ear for the space between the languages, the space between, in my case, English and Spanish, but also that space that sort of finds meaning in poetry. I feel poetry has a lot of spacing in between, a lot of like undercurrent of, on the form, on the page, between stanza, between words. All of that is between space. And to cultivate that between space sort of opens up your ears to what you can say, to your truth, to what you're trying to accomplish. Whether it's a simple story about your son or a complicated story that's more of an epic, like the sense of like finding out what it is that you're trying to get at is a worthwhile journey. And also, I don't really want to find out where I'm going, because if I find out, I have nowhere to go. So it's a continuous question. It's a continuous landing. It's a continuous arrival. So it's always a metaphor. It's always changing. It's transformational in that way. So I just went off all over there, but I hope that.
Oh no! This is where we wanted to go, all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. To really listen and hopefully be heard. I wonder when you speak about meaning and understanding. I don't think there's a literal meaning or understanding that you're expecting people. Maybe expecting is the wrong word, but. How would you like people to approach listening or watching Edwin Torres?
Well, also, I love the name of listening and be heard. That's such the crux of poetry, the crux of communication. I don't have one expectation. I want the chance of possibility. Where can we go here? I feel that the poet writes something, and at that moment, that's what the poem means to them. Hopefully the poem is open enough where you can come back to it later on, and there are other openings that present themselves. So I'm interested in sort of presenting openings, presenting portals in between words or at the end, whatever. I want the audience to feel that, the reader to feel that they're being listened to, and they're being talked to at the same time.
So you almost want to feel like you have heard your listener?
Yes.
Is that too much of a stretch?
No. I want to feel that and that doesn't always happen. But I feel that I want to have the poem saying, okay, I'm listening to you. If a poem can do that on the page, if a poem can
collaborate
with the reader, yeah, which is kind of like how is that physically possible? I don't know. But language lets us create what we don't know.
That is the power of books, though, right? We get to communicate with people from ages past, and they do somehow reach out to us and communicate to us. Now, whether we're talking back to them, I think we are. It's like a continuum, right?
Our ongoing questioning allows us to find out where we can go, that we're not just here, and that it's important to know that we're not just here, that there's a larger universe behind us, in front of us, and we are a continuum. Mm-hmm. So part of that continuum is that you're not alone, and also that you shouldn't be alone, that there are people listening to you, and that you should be communicating to people. I think arts can do that. We're in a position. It's really a gift to be this kind of like a conduit between the unknown and the more unknown. There's never unknown.
And the more unknown. So yes. We're listening, Edwin. Do you have something that you would like to share with us today?
Yes. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna read two short pieces. One is actually about what we're just talking about.
Great. And is it from one of your books?
No, this is unpublished. This is brand new. Okay. It doesn't have a title even.
Well, exclusive world premiere then.
I write about not knowing, claiming that not knowing is a space to move in, to not know the next landing spot for gesture, word, outcome, to not understand a world in constant misunderstanding, to not know the how at the why of a people. There's comfort in the following a need for something lesser than. Following the lesser than, the I don't know of that outcome. Thinking to claim not knowing gives me freedom, the opposite. I am not writing about that outcome, that landscape. The knowing of that is what guides. The knowing guides. It is the knowing inside the getting that gives me landing. To claim landing as a terrain is opposite. To claim the about to be is where I am most myself. The not known there, the about to be what I know.
That was so perfectly appropriate to our spontaneous conversation. I love it. You said you had one more.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Quanundrum.
Okay. And who published Quanundrum?
Roof Books.
Roof Books, that's right.
Roof,
okay.
Yes. Yeah,
and it's available like everywhere?
Yeah. I saw it on Amazon or whatever. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
This is called The Interrupted Blanket. The effort to remain ambiguous while your heart is beating, broken heart as shadow play. I stand on the calculated cliff, inner rinsing against telestration, adhesion of a sun cloud. Jagged reminders, trying to look past deeply torn tensions. Just say it. Are you fitting in or not? Say, oh, and make a good void. Oh, how did that feel? What creates your properly responsive emptiness? Where does my blinking mechanism ride me? Did you know bees sleep in flowers holding each other's feet? And the unsleeping puzzle dreams of its missing piece. The world outside these walls is intent on making me face it. Am I to give in? Or is that giving in one kind of freedom, looking to fit in?
Am I giving in? Oh. Thank you so much, Edwin. I really appreciate you spending time with me today and sharing your poetry. I wanted to talk a little more about your workshop before we go, just so people understand. It's hosted by the Poets House, right?
That's correct. It's Poets House. Can I put the link in your chat? Is that something?
You can send me the link by email, and I will be sure to post it on the page with the video and the podcast and everything else. But if people go to poetshouse.org, I think they could find all the information there.
Yes, they're called 3-hour remote workshops. It's a series of them. It's really fantastic, like every weekend.
And this is called Room to Roam. It's from 12 to 3 this Saturday, June 3rd.
Yes.
And what can people expect to do in those 3 hours with you, Edwin?
Well, I'll be talking. I want to speak to everybody. I always want to find out what they're hoping to get from our time together. And then I have some generative exercises. I'm going to be I'm going to be speaking about a little bit what we've talked about now, but I'm framing it around essays that I've written. And then there's some shared screen exercises that I'll be giving them. And then they go to their separate rooms and collaborate together, and then we talk about it. So it'll be a fun time together to explore what it means to roam inside your body. What does that mean in language?
Well, that sounds exciting. Something that people should go and maybe find out the answer to. So please do go to poetshouse.org, and these are the 3-hour virtual workshops that they do on Saturdays.
Yes.
And this one is on June 3rd, this Saturday.
Thank you, Martha. It's great spending time with you.
Oh, thank you, Edwin, as always. And hope to have you back again sometime soon.
Sure thing. All right.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
I can feel the higher end of the sound spectrum through my fingernails when I don't groom them. Trim them down. Every high-pitched squeal, truck wheel, baby scream, anything involving treble and tweet and vibrate. Inside my ears with pointed shatter, inside what it is, inside my head. Beyond headache, it's the inside of my head. Scratching out like a radio call to imagination. Running loose to stop by the quick ups. Skin calcified, gets cut away. In the nails. The nails are skin excretion. Against a blackboard of sound, they pick up. What they do, it's my fingernails. They pick up on life's higher spectrum. Higher not in a good way, in a scream. This is a gift I was born with, and one that will kill me because my fingers, my nails are needing less and less trimming before the screaming starts. The older I get, the more I skin through life. You know what that is? That's where you know the skin you call your own is trimmed down by the very scream that scratches inside your head. How much longer before all the bottom is gone? And all I'm left with is a high pitch. Everything I hear is the same high pitch. And it's crashing my eardrums, letting me die at this end of the spectrum. With every scream of my nails, I trim, I shear, down to my knuckles. Down to my stump. Muted limbs, my silent galaxy surrounds my body until all that's left is a fisted reminder, a lone frequency shooting the galaxy, burning for just a little bass.
And that was Edwin Torres, following an interview that I did with him earlier today from my studio in Greenville, South Carolina. And he was in Beacon, New York, with some traffic going by outside his window, as well as in Tony's interview. There's people in the background talking. He was interviewing at an event. And all of this is part of what I would consider live radio, just rolling with what is going on in the moment and having these important conversations so that we can listen to each other. And each of us can also be heard. My name is Martha Cinader, and these past 2 hours, you've been listening to Listen and Be Heard on WPVM 103.7, the voice of Asheville. This show is also a podcast. It started out as a podcast and has now become a live radio show for about 4 weeks. And we've now gone from 1 hour to this is our first 2-hour show. So we're growing, we're learning, we're expanding our network, which is what we should be doing so that more readers and writers can listen and be heard. I want to thank Tony Robles for his contributions, as well as Jay Rodriguez Sierra for the wonderful background music that he provides, original pieces just for Listen and Be Heard. And I want to thank you, our listeners, and ask you to please get in touch. Visit us at listenandbeheard.net. Send me an email at editor@listenandbeheard.net. You have a new book out, you want to talk about it, let me know. Send it to the station, let me read it. Participate. Just let me know what you think of the show. I would really like to know that you're listening. So I will be back next week with another 2-hour show from 3 to 5 on WPVM. And I want to thank you very much for listening and allowing me to be heard.
Loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each stitch with magic, creating a unique design, putting it on and wearing it the rest of your life. Living it is knowing that what you see, what you hear is tangible. It's being a rock in the river and being the river too. It's hearing, you'll never be able to do that. Living it is knowing you will do it. It's speaking the unspoken. It's thinking the unthinkable. It's doing the unexpected. It's quitting before you get fired. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is loving a man you're not supposed to love. It's giving way to emotions, creating commotions, calling attention to yourself. And I got that. Living it is learning from someone who can actually show you. It's cleaning your teacher's house or helping her to find one. It's never ever saying J-O-B. Living it is a one-way ticket and no solid plans. It's smoking a J in a smoke cafe in Amsterdam. It's saying the day is pretty in a strange new city. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's putting all of your charms and attributes, every single one of them, to good use. It's knowing the kindness of strangers and love for sale. Living it is knowing where to buy rice and beans in bulk. It's knowing herbs are cheaper than doctors. It's keeping it together when you're falling apart. It's writing poetry to ease a broken heart. Living it is knowing the stage, looking into bright lights, late nights, barroom fights, fantastic sights, inspiration,